So, I have questions about scale. When I was...
No story?
That's the start of the story. It's an abstract opening. I don't know if you've heard of something called experimental film, but it's abstract. Anyway, I have questions about scale. When I was small, I made very, very small videos with my friends. We had a DSLR video camera, not much else. Ourselves, I would not call it filmmaking. I would call it making fun videos with my friends. Then I went to film school and learned filmmaking, how the equipment worked, the techniques, the people, all of that stuff. And I engaged in stuff that I would call filmmaking, regardless of the quality of said filmmaking. And now that I'm out, and I have friends from film school that I'm with, and we're making things at a much smaller scale than we were at film school, because we're starting off fresh, is what we're doing at this scale filmmaking? Or am I just making videos with my friends again?
I was just about to ask, was that a rhetorical question?
It's a crazy one.
No, I do think it is a really important question. I think it is easy to get on the high horse. I think there are the different types of filmmaking, different modes, different approaches, different purposes. I guess in some ways it's a bit like fundamentally when the head chef is Noma still in business, or did they close down yet?
What's it called?
You know, Danish Noma, you know, the
I've never
Danish
heard of
restaurant that had been voted best restaurant in the world for like majority of last decade.
I have not heard of it. Unfortunately, perhaps I'm too young, too busy playing with Bionicles for the last decade.
Point being, that executive chef, fundamentally, when they make food, is it any different on a very fundamental level than when you or I make food? We both make food.
That is an awesome answer. Like an awesome answer.
Does that
like
make
question
sense?
answer, yeah. Because is it?
And I think at the very same level, recording sequential images, moving pictures into a sequence that is telling a story, at the very fundamentals of it, it doesn't matter whether it's you or I, or it's David Fincher or Steven Spielberg or whomever. Like, we are putting together sequences of motion picture images that tell a story. Now, the purpose is different. The aim is different, the audience is different. I guess at a certain point, there is a question of who has the right to tell you, are you a filmmaker or not? And I think a lot of that is about who do you give the right to? Who do you allow to tell you?
Yeah.
And this goes for anyone out there, really.
Unfortunately, the answer to that one is probably I will find out. Naturally.
Part of the question I'm finding myself responding with is coming back to that question of legitimacy. Legitimacy. Damn, that's a difficult word.
It's not an easy word.
Legitimacy. Why does it matter? Why does that word?
Just do the thing.
Why does the L word matter?
I think it's got to do with my ability to transfer my skills into more professional environments. It is actually a very, very good you didn't know question, because shooting things at such a small scale, I'm getting an output that I don't mind. I think it's a totally fine output.
Times has moved past this quote, but do you know Francis Ford Coppola's quote about where we're going to be finding the next Stanley Kubrick?
No, I was trying to be funny. I'm not being funny. What's the quote? I don't know what it is.
Look it up, because it's now probably a bit borderline.
Okay,
and this quote is from the late 90s, I believe. Basically along the lines of like the next true genius talent in the film industry isn't going to come from the established film industry. Again, the legitimacy. Yeah. The legitimacy. Okay.
You did it.
What does it matter?
I have a great answer for you. It matters because of legitimacy.
But who decides what is and isn't legitimate?
I don't like it when you win conversations. I actually don't know, because I know that the answer to that, you'd think the answer to that would be like the big people in the industry, but then obviously...
An industry that is falling apart.
Yes, an industry that could not be more falling apart right now. An industry with so little legitimacy, falling through its fingers. And I have an anecdote that you can broadcast it. It might just be a rumor or a legend. I think Joel and Ethan Coen hadn't been on a film set until they walked on to shoot Blood Simple. Like, ever in their lives. And I sit there and like, oh, that's so cool. And I just don't apply that to myself at all. Having some experience, or at least some understanding of proper processes, helps you get along with people. Otherwise, there's a chance you might seem arrogant. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but like...
Can you give an example?
Probably not. Everyone always talks about a director who walks on set and doesn't know anything about what they're doing. And there's always these, maybe that's the point of the whole thing.
There is a caveat to that, and that is the difference between someone who walks on set thinking and acting as if they know everything without knowing anything, and someone who generally doesn't know much and are quite willing, openly saying, I don't know. Huge, huge, huge difference.
True. I like to have that energy personally. I walk on set with the aura of a kindergartner, ready to be taught like how to speak.
Yeah, there are
like I don't walk on and like beg people for information, but I'm not gonna. I ask questions. I like to think asking questions is important.
Why do you think these specific roles and functions in your film school productions were mandated?
Because they make it work better. Like specific roles and functions on a film set make the set function better. This is not a broader political statement, by the way, guys. Just letting you know, this is not. When everyone is in their own little corner, doing their own little thing, and contributing largely to the overall product in a mandated way. I have so many thoughts halfway through this. It makes it work better.
That's what you get for bombarding me with questions.
Yeah, now I'm being bombarded back with not questions, but like deeply layered statements that redirect my train of thought halfway through. Boy, I'm hungry. It's to make things work better, right?
Yeah, hopefully the lesson that students take from it is to understand the things that need to be taken care of because they can see someone has been assigned to take care of that.
Okay.
Not necessarily that you have to have XYZ person, XYZ position, but what they are in charge of checking off and making sure is happening, someone needs to take care of that.
That brings me...
Out of curiosity,
yeah,
is that the lesson that sinks in for the average student?
Subconsciously, I think so, yeah. Now that you mention that, at least for my cohort, like my group, who I make things with, there's less of a focus on making sure that every single role has a person slotted into it, but instead, the duties of every vital role are being performed by someone. And that takes me to multi-hyphenates, because I've been skeleton crewing the shit out of all of this stuff. And it means that we are getting some of the strangest multi-hyphenates I've seen ever, and they're fantastic. And we've talked about multi-hyphenates before, and I'm beginning to think that they develop not only out of passion, but also out of necessity and employability. People like assistant camera colorist, for example. I think that sounds like an employability-focused hyphenate right there. It's pretty good. In this situation, necessity has meant that tomorrow, when we shoot, our production designer, when they finish dressing the set, is going to pick up the boom and the little mixer and record sound after that. And you know what? Production design is ticked off. That role, the duty is being performed, and so is sound. So why should I worry so much about making sure every single, one person is slotted into all of those roles? I am going to answer my own question. The reason why is because I think they complete those roles to a better quality when they're given more headspace. But at the scale I'm shooting, do they need all the headspace? Is the quality that important? Who knows? What are your thoughts?
That is very situation dependent. Part of where the scale of production comes in is to scale back the expectations in a way that isn't going to necessarily become visible in the footage, in the story.
Can you go on? I'm not following.
So if I knew I had to go into production with that particular hyphenate production designer sound recorders, I would want to consciously strip down the necessities in the production design department on a fundamental script level.
To make sure you had more headspace, or?
That's just one example.
Okay.
But to do it on a conceptual script level so it doesn't look like you are restricted in resources for the story. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. So a small script, small concept, small location,
yes,
lends itself better to that kind of multi-hyphenate, small structure crewing strategy.
Yes.
That's great, because that's exactly what I'm doing right now. All my questions are answered. I feel empowered and enabled. Let's end the episode right here.
If we scale it up just a little bit, I don't think Darkstar would have been improved vastly by doubling, quadrupling, or tenfolding the budget.
I love that you brought up Darkstar. That is such a good example. I wouldn't even thought of that.
And when you think about it, that is written down in on an actual screenplay level.
And you've got some weird hyphenates in that one. You've got Dan O'Bannon, who helped write the thing. Is in it.
But that's what I mean by taking into account the scale in the actual conceptualization. I think where it can feel illegitimate for for want of a better word, is when the ambitions of the concept outstrip the scale that is possible for the production, and when that comes through visually on screen. Another example, Kevin Smith's Clerks.
Yeah.
So do you know the plot device of the sticky roller door that they can't open? Do you know why that was written in the script?
No.
The convenience store would let them shoot between like midnight and 4 a.m. By having the roller doors stuck, they could set their scenes during the day if they wanted to, because you wouldn't see that there was no daylight outside.
Right.
So again, because they made a running gag out of this stuck roller door, it just feels like, yeah, that's
Part of the script.
Yeah.
It sounds to me there's a kind of weird universal answer happening here. Tell me if I'm wrong. The question of legitimacy and the question of scale and crewing to such a scale, both of those things seem to be not solved, but I think it sounds like it's very important to check your expectations. So
Yeah, absolutely.
say you've just finished JMC and you've shot your grad film, right? And then you off and ready to direct your next short, and you try to hire a mid-career to professional DP and say, listen, man, I haven't got the money to pay you, but I've just made a really great short film. We can do this for exposure. Or like even the smaller example of walking onto a set and thinking that you know everything. Walking onto a commercial set directly after film school and thinking that you know everything. If you don't check your expectations, that can happen. And the same thing goes for the small crew, like the skeleton crew and the one camera. If you're going to do the skeleton crew with multi-hyphenates for a science fiction spaghetti western, that might not work out. But if the script is a science fiction film, let's say hypothetically shot entirely in one room, that's meant to be a spaceship, it might work out.
Having said all that, I do think that I'm wondering whether your skit is kind of falling in between two chairs scale-wise. It seems to be a bit much of a production for just exercises and practice.
Yeah.
But I think you would probably find a better product if you could guarantee at least one multifaceted assistant in your department.
What do you mean?
As in one lighting / camera assistant along those lines.
So a good balance would be a HOD for each department and then one multifaceted assistant.
Not necessarily for all departments. I definitely think cinematography
requires a lot more assistance.
Yeah, I think you are going to work a lot better. You are going to be less hamstrung with at least one assistant.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a difficult one in this situation. To me, it sounds like you either need to find a way of scaling up the skit, like, just tiny little bit, or you need to scale it down and make it more exercise practice and be less concerned about having an output for each shoot day.
Yeah.
My gut feel is that you need to either push it one way or the other.
I think I'm in the pushing it one way up camp at the moment. I'm too invested at this point. And it's not really something I can avoid, if that makes sense. Which I can do. I can do that. Yeah. I can do that.
To me, it sounds like, I don't know what the concept is, but to me, it sounds like I would seriously consider trying to get more out of each location, get more shoots out of each location, get more episodes out of each location.
Okay. Do you mean out of each location and shoot day, or just location?
Both.
We have tossed that up.
Sounds like you could benefit from not having to work out lighting for a new location every single time. Being able to walk in and go, yeah, I remember that was there, that was there, that was there. Maybe tweak a little bit, make it feel like a different day or like a few months or a week or whatever has passed. But yeah, I think at that level, there are ways of gaining some of that efficiency.
Yeah. Cool.
What kills a schedule is location moves.
Okay.
Not just the physical move, but just that, like, getting to know a new space, figuring out like all that.
We have had to do that like twice, and it's definitely been like the most time consuming part of the process.
I would so much advise find a location that you can get regular access to, and then right around that.
Yeah.
Part of Clerks was Kevin Smith knew he could get access to this convenience store, hence why they are clerks working in the store.
Okay, I really like that. I'm also going to look at my scripts, the pre-existing ones, and think, can this happen in the location we shot in before? If not, can I write it to happen in the location that we shot before? Can I rewrite them? I really like that approach. That's nice. It's kind of sustainable and makes things... It's like having a multifaceted assistant. It takes away from a bit of the headspace that it would otherwise take up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the genesis, the inception story of, but I would suspect Ted, something like Ted.
Ted, like the The teddy bear?
And the Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We're on the same page.
That is Ted?
Yep.
What's that called? It's called Ted?
It's called Ted?
I suspect that the inception of that concept would have come around similar kind of constraints.
Oh.
As in, yeah, I can shoot my own couch. I can shoot myself and a mate dressed up in some like imaginary whatever. I have access to this.
Have you seen Ted?
I think I have. Now it's time to get me second guessing myself.
Is it just the couch?
Am I mixing it up?
I thought it was like a whole thing.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, it is. But I'm imagining the inception, the first.
Right, yeah. The idea
initial
that brought it up was I can shoot my couch and a guy hanging out with his teddy bear.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I can do this. No?
Because
I like
if
that.
you were thinking about like this, if you're going to shoot a pitch for that movie, what do you think the bare bones necessities? It would have been the two on the couch, right?
Being funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are so many concepts that have started like that. It's a matter of like upending the process a little bit. Start with your resources.
Yeah.
Like what can you source?
I think to a certain extent I am doing that a bit, at least subconsciously. We've spoken about this before, like the interior night situation, where it's a great idea to write a short that is interior night, because it's very easy to shoot that. And I've written so many interior night things since we discussed that, and it's been wonderful because all those have worked out. I mean, what is happening right now? I'm very pro writing for accessibility. Something I've been thinking about for a very, very long time and mostly been doing. I'm trying to strike a balance, you know? I think rewriting for accessibility is going to become very important because I can't allow myself to get attached to what I'm writing and then not drawing it back to a shootable scale.
You know, like that temptation, like that. I wonder whether there is some of that legitimacy in it.
Yeah.
Like that question of like production value
Yeah, probably.
makes my film feel more legitimate.
I reckon you're right.
Whereas I think like audiences don't really care that much if things feel diegetic and intrinsic. I was trying to think of some examples. The ones that I always use are Clerks and Dark Star.
I would not mind now turning the question to the viewer. Like, where have they shot? What have they written to shoot? What kind of scale do they shoot at? What was the smallest scale? What was the largest scale? How did it make a difference on the content? Was it written that way? I ask so many questions. I'm sure you can figure out a more cohesive version of what I'm trying to say. I think this is pretty well rounded. Like I've kind of got what I need out of this, and I know that the viewer will probably have got what they need. I hope.
So what did we get out of it?
It's kind of become a checking and setting expectations thing. You can check your expectations by comparing the scale of what you're shooting to the content, but you can also set your expectations by writing for the scale that you know is accessible to you, which I think I'm all right at, but I think I can get better at it. I think it's very important for people that are in my position to write at the scale accessible to us. Because whether we like it or not, we have less access to the resources that we had in film school, however scarce they were in the first place. So we need to write small and interesting and interior night and your mum's house and the shop down the street.
I think it's also important to try and flip that thinking a little bit and be less kind of like, we need to write a certain way because we don't have, and aim more for making it feel like we don't need, as in the story doesn't need more than what we have, as opposed to we have to scale the story down to what we have.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I know, there's a much better way of wording it. The story doesn't need what we don't have. So yeah, if your sci-fi story only needs one room, and you have one room that you're happy to dress, then you're fine. Thumbs up. That's my ceremonial thumbs up to conclude the discussion.